My ex-husband married his dream woman just 6 days after our divorce. By that evening, their wedding photos had spread across every social media platform. Friends kept texting to ask if I was okay, convinced I'd be devastated after losing an 8-year marriage. I wasn't crying. I was staring at one photo. Slowly, I zoomed in on the bride's face. The elegant smile, the striking green eyes, the faint scar hidden near her right temple. My stomach dropped. I'd seen that woman before. Not at one of Daniel's business parties. Not through mutual friends. Somewhere else. Somewhere no bride should ever have been. Daniel stood beside her wearing the biggest smile I'd ever seen, completely unaware that the woman wrapped around. His arm carried a secret capable of destroying everything he'd spent years building. The caption beneath the photo made me laugh. Sometimes life rewards you when you finally choose the right woman. He wanted everyone to believe he'd traded up. He wanted them to believe I was the mistake. What Daniel didn't know was that the biggest mistake in that picture wasn't our divorce, it was his new wife. My name is Emily Parker. I'm 35 years old, and 4 months ago I believed love could survive almost anything. Looking back, maybe that was my biggest flaw. I ignored the warning signs because I wanted our marriage to work. When Daniel launched his real estate company, I worked full-time as a corporate paralegal, then came home and spent my evenings helping him review contracts and organize paperwork. I told myself every sacrifice was building our future together. Success changed him. First came the designer suits, then the luxury car, then the comments. One night, after a company dinner, he glanced at my aging sedan and laughed. "You should really drive something that matches my image now." His clients laughed with him. I forced a smile, pretending it didn't hurt. A month later, he stopped introducing me as his wife. "This is Emily," he'd say. She was there when I started, as though I were part of his company's history instead of the woman who helped build it. Then, on a rainy Thursday evening, he placed a thick envelope on our kitchen counter. My hands trembled as I unfolded the papers. "Divorce papers. I've met someone who fits the life I want now," he said calmly. I thought signing those papers would be the hardest moment of my life. I had no idea that 6 days later, one wedding photo would uncover a secret that could change Daniel's life forever. For nearly 10 minutes, I couldn't look away from that wedding photo. My coffee had gone cold beside me. My phone kept buzzing with messages from friends, but I ignored every one of them. I was staring at the bride. Daniel looked happier than I'd ever seen him, smiling as if he'd finally won. Then the memory came rushing back. A federal courthouse in downtown Chicago, 5 years earlier. At the time, I worked as a corporate paralegal. My firm occasionally helped attorneys organize financial evidence for complex white-collar cases. Most files blurred together over the years. One didn't. The woman in that courtroom had called herself Victoria Reed. She sat perfectly still, dressed like a successful executive, answering every question with quiet confidence. If you didn't know the case, you would have believed every word she said. The investigation centered on allegations that she had used multiple identities to gain the trust of wealthy business owners before persuading them to make disastrous financial decisions. In the end, prosecutors couldn't move forward because there wasn't enough admissible financial evidence to prove the full scheme in court. The case quietly stalled. Victoria walked out a free woman, but I'd never forgotten her face, especially the faint scar near her right temple, or the antique silver bracelet she wore every single day. My heart skipped a beat. I zoomed back into Daniel's wedding photo. There it was. The exact same bracelet rested on Isabella's wrist. She had changed her name, her hair, her style, but she hadn't replaced the one thing that connected her to the past. A chill ran through me. I opened my laptop and searched for Isabella Brooks. At first, everything looked perfect. Magazine features, charity events, luxury galas. But the more I searched, the stranger it became. Every article about her had appeared within the last 18 months. There were no college records, no interviews from earlier years, no old family photographs, no digital history that stretched back the way a wealthy heiress's life should. It was as if someone had carefully built a flawless public image and forgotten to give it a real past. I glanced back at Daniel's smiling face in the wedding picture. He looked proud, victorious, completely convinced he'd married into the perfect life. Then another memory surfaced. During our divorce, Daniel hadn't cared about the furniture or our savings. He fought for one thing only: complete control of every company account, investment, and commercial property. At the time, I blamed his ego. Now, a different thought settled into my mind. What if those decisions hadn't been his idea at all? And if I was right? Daniel's nightmare had already begun long before he said, "I do." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's triumphant smile beside the woman now calling herself Isabella Brooks. By morning, I'd made one decision. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. An investigation that had stalled? Years ago wasn't enough to accuse someone publicly, and I refused to become the bitter ex-wife nobody believed. I needed proof. And more importantly, I needed to know whether she remembered me. 2 days later, Daniel gave me the perfect opportunity. He announced a lavish post-wedding reception at one of Chicago's most exclusive hotels. Business owners, investors, and local reporters filled the ballroom. Daniel wasn't just celebrating his marriage. He was showing the world he'd won. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to leave my old life behind forever. But if Isabella really was Victoria Reed, walking away would mean ignoring the biggest warning sign I'd ever seen. I slipped into a simple black dress and quietly entered the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished, marble floors while photographers chased Daniel from one guest to another. He looked proud, victorious, like the divorce had been nothing more than another successful business deal. Then our eyes met. A wide grin spread across his face. "Emily," he called loudly. "I didn't think you'd come." Conversations around us slowed. Daniel slipped an arm around Isabella's waist and smiled for the cameras. "I hope seeing us together helps you move on," he said. "Everyone deserves someone who fits the life they're meant to live." A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Daniel had always confused confidence with cruelty. I didn't answer him. Instead, I stepped toward Isabella. She smiled politely, but I noticed her grip tighten around her champagne glass. "That's a beautiful bracelet," I said warmly. She glanced down for just a second. "I'm surprised you still wear it." For the first time that evening, she stopped smiling, only for a heartbeat. Then she looked directly into my eyes. I lowered my voice. Some memories are impossible to erase, aren't they? The color drained from her face. Daniel frowned. "Isabella?" She blinked quickly before forcing another smile. "I'm fine," she said, her voice almost steady. "I just need a little air." Without waiting for a reply, she walked toward the terrace. Daniel watched her leave, confusion replacing his confidence. "What was that about?" he asked, looking at me. I simply smiled. "I think your wife recognized someone." Before he could ask another question, I turned and walked away. As I reached the ballroom doors, I heard something small hit the marble floor behind me. I looked back. A silver bracelet lay near the entrance to the terrace. Daniel walked right past it without noticing. I bent down and picked it up. Hidden inside the clasp were 2 tiny engraved initials. VR. My heartbeat quickened. Isabella. Brooks had just dropped the first piece of evidence proving she had never been Isabella Brooks at all. Part 4. My ex married his dream. Woman days after our divorce. Then I recognized her from court. I slipped the bracelet into my purse before anyone else noticed it. Daniel was too busy looking for Isabella to see me leave. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Meet me tomorrow, alone. I already knew who it was. The next morning, we met at a quiet coffee shop overlooking the Chicago River. Without the designer dress, expensive jewelry, or perfect makeup, she looked like an ordinary woman. Her eyes fell on the silver bracelet resting beside my coffee. "You kept it." "It still has your initials," I replied. She let out a slow breath. "It's over." The bank's fraud compliance team flagged the transfers before they cleared. "There's nothing left for me to protect." She slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were signed investment agreements, loan documents, and account authorizations. Every signature belonged to Daniel. "I never forged a single document," she said quietly. He signed them because he trusted the fantasy more than the people who cared about him. I closed the folder. I only came to confirm one thing: that I'm Victoria Reed. I nodded. For the first time, she looked genuinely defeated. I spent years changing my name, she whispered. Funny. One person still remembered my real face. She stood, adjusted her baseball cap, and walked into the morning crowd without looking back. I never saw Victoria Reed again. That evening, Daniel called. His voice was shaking. Emily, the bank froze my business accounts. My biggest clients have paused their projects, and my lawyer says lenders are reviewing every loan I signed. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he quietly asked, "You knew, didn't you? You recognized her?" I recognized the truth. Silence filled the call. Finally, he whispered, "Why didn't you stop me?" I closed my eyes. "You stopped listening to me long before you divorced me." His breathing caught. "I'm sorry, Emily. Years ago, those words would have meant everything. Now they felt like they belonged to someone else's life." When I returned home, I placed the silver bracelet in the back of a drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the day I finally stopped carrying someone else's mistakes. Sometimes karma doesn't need our help. Sometimes people create it with their own choices. What would you have done in my place? Would you have warned Daniel, or let him face the consequences of his own decisions? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch the next Revenge Diaries story on your screen.